Another Trundle Nerf? I can smell that tank meta already. What up, guys? My name is Dan, and I'm here with another ProGuides high ELO tier list. As always, I'm going to run you guys through our tier lists that are designated specifically for high ELO. We're covering every role, so make sure to stay tuned to see where your favorite champions are placed. For more in-depth coverage of the patch, make sure to check out our patch rundown that we released earlier. In that video, we cover every single change and give our analysts' thoughts on them as well. Also, before we start, can you do me a favor and answer our question of the day? What champion do you want to get better at playing before the season ends? I'm trying to get some more practice on Aurelia. She's challenging for sure, but feels so good to play when you do manage to pull ahead in games. Let me know your answers in the comments below. First up is Riven. Her passive's bonus damage has been buffed from 25 to 50% total AD to 30 to 60% total AD. This is a relatively small buff, but a buff nonetheless. I'm sure all Riven mains are happy to take any buff they can get their hands on. While Riven has been underperforming, she's been doing okay in high ELO. In Masters and higher, she's actually ended the last patch with about a 52% win rate, and the fact that she's getting buffed spells trouble in the top lane for elite players. Around the Platinum level, this should bring her win rate up to about 50%. Riven has been severely underperforming in low to mid ELO, which merits these buffs. However, Riven will definitely continue to dominate the top lane for high ELO players. As this buff was a rather small one, we're going to keep her in our A tier for now. However, our analysts are going to keep monitoring her statistics because even the smallest balance changes can spur significant changes in high ELO. Next is Wukong. His ultimate's knock-up duration has been reduced from 0.75 seconds to 0.6 seconds. Finally, Riot has decided to give Monkey King another nerf. The good old spin-to-win ultimate is a good place to take some power away from. Wukong deals a ton of damage and brings a sizable amount of crowd control to the table with his ultimate. Taking away some utility should put him a little closer to a balanced spot, but realistically, there's just no way that's happening off of this nerf alone. While this nerf might seem rather small, it's actually pretty big. Wukong can cast his ultimate twice, so any nerf is actually 2 times as big as it appears. With this nerf, we've moved Wukong from the S+ tier into the S tier. Finally, Volibear has also been nerfed. Volibear's base attack speed has been reduced from 0.66 to 0.625 and his healing from monsters from 100 to 50%. This nerf is a pretty sizable one and hurts him more as a jungler than as a top laner. Part of top lane Volibear's strength is his ability to flex pick as a jungler. We think that the B tier is still an appropriate place for Volibear to be. Our analysts were actually thinking they placed him too low, but since he's been nerfed, this placement seems okay. Volibear's win rate is significantly higher as a jungler, and this is due to the fact that jungle Volibear can use his ultimate to turret dive any lane. Top lane Volibear is confined to his own lane, making it harder to take advantage of his incredibly powerful ultimate ability. Aside from balance changes, we've also made a couple of other tweaks to the list. First, Hecarim has been moved into the S tier. Summoner Ghost was buffed this patch, and this is going to push Hecarim into that next tier. Darius is already in the S+ tier, so unfortunately, he can't really go any higher. Renekton, on the other hand, has been moved down to the A tier. While he's a safe, reliable pick, Renekton feels a little bit underwhelming when compared to other S tier picks. His win rates have been slowly dropping, likely a result of the meta developing and players getting better at dealing with him. Our S+ tier for the top lane consists of Darius and Fiora, while the S tier is comprised of Kled, Wukong, Shen, Jax, Singed, Garen, Maokai, Syndra, Camille, and Hecarim. We expect Summoner Ghost to become a much more popular summoner spell choice this patch. Thus, we suggest you guys also watch out for Singed. Although he's a less popular pick, don't underestimate him. Singed actually deals an incredible amount of damage, and with more mobility than before, the #1 rule of League of Legends still stands: never chase a Singed. Alright, that's it for the top lane, so let's head into the jungle next. Kicking off the jungle, let's talk about that Trundle nerf. In the not-so-distant past, Trundle was a dominant S-tier pick. His incredible damage and dueling power made him a great pick into basically any team composition. Nerf after nerf have slowly taken away from this previous glory, and it feels like he's not a universally powerful pick anymore. Trundle's W attack speed bonus has been reduced from 30 to 100% to 20 to 100%, and this is pretty significant in the early game. With so many consecutive nerfs, it's finally time that we brought Trundle down to the B tier. Previously, you could pick Trundle at any time, and his insane damage let him win basically any duel. It didn't matter who he was against. If Trundle could get in melee range, he'd win the fight and smack the living daylights out of his opponents. His movement speed bonus was decreased in the previous patch, and now his attack speed has taken a hit too. Thus, Trundle will now be a pick that's better reserved to counter tanks. Another balanced change in the jungle is to Kha'Zix. His base health was increased from 572.8 to 575, while his Q's isolation multiplier was increased from 2 to 2.2. High elo players have a better understanding of how to play against Kha'Zix, so the isolation damage is a very situational buff when it comes to team fighting and skirmishes. Social distancing is a good approach, except when you're playing against Kha'Zix. Stay near allies or minions so that you don't get instantly one-shot after these buffs. This buff will without a doubt increase Kha'Zix's clear speed. This buff is going to make Kha'Zix's already solid Dragon, Rift Herald, and Baron clear even faster than before. Isolated players need to fear Kha'Zix, but so do isolated monsters. Don't get caught off guard when Kha'Zix quickly solos dragons. Make sure you keep neutral objectives warded whenever possible. The final buff we need to go over is Sejuani's. The damage on her E has gone from 40 to 240 to 55 to 255. The cooldown reduced from 10 to 8 to 8 flat. Sejuani is an incredibly powerful pick, especially in organized play. While solo queue can never compare to competitive play, you can always duo with a teammate to take advantage of these Sejuani buffs. Sejuani is a ridiculously powerful pick in certain team compositions. When paired with melee champions, she's a fearsome opponent that can easily lock down her enemies. The range increase is especially huge. Players need to be even more cautious when playing against Sejuani. We've moved Sejuani up to the A tier in response to these buffs. There's a Karthus change we're going to talk about in the mid lane section, but it seems like Karthus' strength as a jungler will remain about the same, so he'll also stay in the A tier. Our S+ tier for the jungle consists of Rek'Sai, Elise, Wukong, Fiddlesticks, and Olaf. Next, the S tier consists of Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Rengar, Zac, Nidalee, Kayn, Evelynn, and Graves. One pick you need to look out for is Nunu and Willem. This tag team duo has been killing it on Summoner's Rift, and they're making their presence known in high elo as well. While they haven't made it into the S tier just yet, they're definitely on the watch list. Trundle Nerfs are an indirect buff to any tank jungler, and that includes Nunu and Willem. They received a buff on patch 10.13, providing some stronger AP scaling. His win rate shot up, and our analysts think they have a good shot at making it into the S tier next patch. Only time will tell, but if you want a faster update, make sure to check out our mid-patch update next week. Alright, next up is the mid lane. Let's talk about the biggest mid lane change first, which is to Karthus. He's been played almost exclusively as a jungler for a while now, and Riot wants to give him some more tools to succeed as a mid laner as well. His base health has been increased from 528 to 550, and his movement speed buffed from 325 to 335. Next, his Q damage went up from 45 to 125 plus 30% AP to 50 to 130 plus 35% AP, and his Q damage to monsters has been decreased from 100% to 80%. Finally, his E now restores mana at all times, whether or not it's toggled, and the damage will tick 4 times a second rather than 1 time a second. Like we mentioned, we felt like his strength as a jungler remained around the same. He got a ton of buffs, but also has a jungle monster penalty on his Q now. Our analysts aren't too optimistic about Karthus mid. In spite of these buffs, they predict he'll be too volatile of a pick. His lack of mobility makes him easy prey for mobile picks such as assassins. No one likes playing versus a fed assassin, right guys? Anyway, Karthus is going to be unrated for this patch. We'll update you all in our next video, but he's essentially a new mid laner since he's being reintroduced there after a long hiatus. Next on the buff list is Zed. His W's missile speed has been increased from 1,750 to 2,500, while his W's cooldown has been decreased from 22 to 14 to 20 to 14. This buff looks sick, and our analysts immediately decided to move him into the A tier after hearing about them. Of course, he's subjectively an S tier pick. It all comes down to a player's mastery over him, but that can be said about any champion. These buffs are pretty big though. His damage wasn't touched, but it's much harder to avoid it now that his shadow moves quicker than before. The decreased cooldown early is also pretty nice. Zed players can trade with their W more frequently now, and you shouldn't take these buffs for granted. High elo players especially are going to milk as much free low out of these buffs as they can. Finally, Pike Mid is finally getting nerfed. Riot doesn't like that their support assassin masterpiece has become a science experiment gone wrong and taken to solo lanes instead. Pike received a ton of changes, so let's run you through them. Pike's magic resist per level has been decreased from 1.5 to 1.25, his armor per level from 5 to 3.5, and his W's movement speed from 40 to 60% to a flat 40%. His Q's cooldown has decreased from 12 to 8 seconds to 10 to 8 seconds. The mana cost changed from 70 flat to 55 to 75, and its damage has gone up from 75 to 275 to 85 to 285. Finally, his ease damage was also buffed from 95 to 215 to 105 to 225. Pike isn't as tanky as before. His incredibly high base armor and magic resistance gave him the necessary durability to survive in solo lanes, and thus Riot has decided to tone down on this. However, his damage has gone up, and we expect him to still be picked as a solo laner by dedicated mains. In spite of these nerfs, we think Pike can comfortably remain in the B tier. Our S+ tier for the mid lane consists of Zoe, Galio, and Twisted Fate, while the S tier consists of Talon, Diana, Vladimir, Fizz, Katarina, and Cassiopeia. We don't have extensive changes to the mid lane tier list this patch, but we do want to talk a bit about Summoner Ghost. Be extra careful of Annie, Malzahar, and Twisted Fate this patch. Summoner Ghost was buffed and can turn these picks into gank machines. Their point-and-click crowd control can be troublesome to deal with. Give any of these champions Summoner Ghost, and you're just asking for a huge headache if you're up playing against one of them. Don't fall victim to ganks because you underestimated the ghost buffs combined with some point-and-click crowd control. Run cleanse, buy wards, save your own life. Alright, that's it for the mid lane, so let's head into the bot lane next. Once again, Varus has been hit by another nerf. His Q's max damage ratio has been lowered from 150% to 125 to 145% based on rank. The minimum damage has been lowered from 100% to 83 to 97%. And finally, his E's base damage has been decreased from 70 to 210 to 50 to 210. Unfortunately, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Riot is really cracking down on Varus. Varus has been way too oppressive in elite levels of play, and as a result, he's getting nerfed for the millionth time. Even in high elo, our analysts think that this nerf is the one that'll finally dethrone him. We've moved Varus into the B tier as he's lost a ton of damage as a result of these changes. Riot has also finally decided to hit the king of marksmen for once. Ezreal has been the most popular champion in the entire game for several patches now. If that doesn't say anything, then maybe these nerfs will. His E's cooldown has been increased from 25 to 13 to 28 to 16. Tacking on 3 seconds to Ezreal's escape is a pretty big deal, especially in team fights. This nerf could cost Ezreal players their lives. Our analysts were pretty torn about this nerf, but have decided to move him to the A tier for now. We'll have to continue monitoring him because it's very likely he could still be an S tier pick in spite of this massive nerf. Alright, let's talk about a couple of other shifts we've made to the list. First, Ashe has been moved to the A tier. Her success in the bottom lane is irrefutable, even in high elo. With Varus receiving nerfs, Ashe now has the spotlight. She too can press the R button and guarantee easy kills, but her ultimate is global, unlike Varus's. Ashe is a great pick because she deals plenty of damage, but also provides her team with an immense amount of utility and information. Ashe's Hawkshot is one of the most useful scouting tools in the game, and high elo players especially can appreciate what she brings to the table. The next change is that we've moved Aphelios back into the S tier. They gutted him, but he's still OP. Much to our surprise, he's still seeing an incredible amount of play in high elo and still finding success in elite levels of play. Cleaning up the list a little bit more, we've moved Cassiopeia to the A tier. She's seeing even less play than before, and this change is actually coming a little bit late as her base armor and HP were lowered back in patch 10.12. Our S+ tier for the bot lane consists of Kai'Sa alone now, and following her in the S tier are Senna, Heimerdinger, Draven, Vayne, and Aphelios. That covers our bottom lane section, so let's conclude with supports. With only one support change to cover, let's get right to it. Alistar's Q cooldown has been reduced from 17 to 13 seconds to 15 to 11 seconds. Personally, I like seeing Alistar. He's an explosive support that decisively begins fights and makes plays everywhere. We've moved him up to A tier because these buffs are way too big to go and ignore. Alistar was actually one of the strongest supports in Challenger ELO last patch. However, part of this is probably due to him being picked under favorable circumstances, as the sample size of games was rather low. With this buff, however, we expect high elo players to play him more as they now have another playmaking support to abuse. We only have 2 other shifts that we need to make to our list, and one of those is for Yuumi. Yuumi has been moved to the C tier. Even in high elo, the massive nerfs she received last patch have significantly brought her win rate down. She's not performing at the same level as before, and now feels like a pick that can only succeed under the right circumstances. The next one is for Lulu, but we'll just include her as we run through our S+ tier, which consists of Bard, Senna, and Lulu. Lulu is basically the new Yuumi. Her ban rate has climbed incredibly over the past several patches. In Platinum and higher, her ban rate was at around 17% on patch 10.11, but climbed all the way up to 26% by the end of last patch. With Yuumi gone, support players have been on the scramble to find a suitable replacement for her, and they found it in Lulu, who can buff up her allies in similar ways. The S tier consists of Thresh, Leona, Blitzcrank, and Janna. Once again, be on the lookout for Alistar this patch. He's borderline S tier for sure, and we suggest you guys give him a try. With 40% cooldown reduction, his Q's cooldown goes down to 6 seconds in the late game, which is absolutely insane for how powerful the ability is. And that concludes our 10.14 high elo tier list. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and also subscribe so you can stay updated with all the different kinds of content that we're releasing. Also, like I mentioned earlier, check out ProGuides.com if you're serious about climbing this season. Until next time, best of luck on Summoner's Rift, guys.